we're going to go ahead and get the program started, but we did finally get some pastries and fruit down here, so if you wanted to sneak back to the corner and refill your coffee and grab a bite to eat, now would be the time to do that. We're going to go ahead and start off with the program. For those of you who have not met me yet, my name is Drew Peterson, and I'm the President and CEO of the Shelton-Mason County Chamber, and I am so pleased that today's legislative send-off is being held jointly together with our chamber, the North Mason Chamber, and the Mason EDC. The send-off offers a valuable opportunity to hear directly from our elected officials and gain insight into the issues expected to shape the upcoming session. It's one of the few occasions each year when constituents can speak with all three of our lawmakers in a single setting and share concerns related to local economy and quality of life. As we look forward to the 26th session, it's an honor to welcome our distinguished state legislators, Senator Drew MacEwen, Representative Travis Couture, and Dan Griffey. Their insights are particularly valuable as we face today's dynamic economic and political landscape. This morning I'm joined by my colleagues, Kevin Schutte from the EDC of Mason County and Carrie London Myers, the CEO of the North Mason Chamber. Carrie?
Thank you, Deidre. Before we begin, we want to extend our sincere appreciation to Green Diamond and Oliver Resort for sponsoring today's event. Their support allows our organizations to begin to bring the business community and our legislative delegation together for this important discussion. We would also like to recognize the individuals who helped strengthen our region. If you serve on the board of either chamber or the EDC, or are an elected official or public sector partner, would you please stand so we may acknowledge you. Thank you for your leadership and partnership.
Thanks, Carrie. The Economic Development Council of Mason County is focused on supporting small businesses and entrepreneurs in our community. We recognize the value local employers bring to our economy, and it's our mission to provide them with the support they need to grow and thrive. The support begins with advocating for a fair regulatory environment, modern infrastructure, workforce training and career pathways, and affordable housing. Priorities reflected in the joint legislative agenda we are presenting today. To our delegation, that's a joint legislative agenda that we're presenting today. So a lot of progress by our organizations. Washington State operates on a 2-year budget cycle. Even-numbered years like 2026 are dedicated to a 60-day short session where lawmakers do not write a new biennial budget. Instead, they pass a supplemental operating, transportation, and capital budget to adjust for updated forecasts and emerging needs. Short session moves quickly and tend to focus on refining existing policies, advancing bills carried over from the prior year, and responding to timely issues affecting communities and employers. Even modest changes can impact permitting timelines, workforce availability, infrastructure funding, and the cost of doing business. The 2026 session begins January 12th, with bill 3 filing opening today, December 1st. To strengthen Mason County's voice, the Chambers and Mason EDC have developed a coordinated set of legislative priorities. This unified approach helps ensure lawmakers receive clear, consistent guidance on the projects and policies critical to local employers.
Thank you, Kevin. Together, the Shelton-Mason County Chamber, the North Mason Chamber, and the Mason EDC serve as the collective voice of the business community. At the Chamber, we make it a point to be at the heart of the issues that shape our region's economic future, workforce development, quality of life, and civic engagement. Our public policy guidelines address a wide range of topics, from environmental stewardship and arts and culture to affordable housing, infrastructure, efficient governance, and balanced labor practices. Ultimately, we advocate for policies and programs that create an environment in which businesses can thrive, grow, and invest in Mason County. This shared perspective is reflected in the 2026 joint legislative priorities, which Carrie, Kevin, and I will now very briefly outline. First, under business climate and regulatory predictability, support a predictable and balanced regulatory environment that fosters business growth and job creation, and oppose new taxes or mandates that increase costs for employers or diminish competitiveness.
Workforce, housing, and permitting. Support continued funding for workforce programs connecting education and industry. Advance policies that expand workforce and affordable housing, streamline permitting, and invest in infrastructure necessary for residential and economic growth.
Infrastructure and site readiness. We support continued funding for the Community Economic Revitalization Board, Public Works Trust Fund, broadband, water, power, and freight infrastructure. Support the restoration of site readiness grants that prepare shovel-ready commercial and industrial sites. Highlight priority projects across Mason County. There are copies at each of your tables of these priorities, and there are also some extras up front. So one of the key projects that we have is the State Route 3 Freight Corridor project, the City of Shelton's Mountain View Water Pressure project, Mason County's acquisition of Mason Lake Park, and then PUD1 grid resilience projects as well. At this time, I'd like to welcome Jeff Slakey of KMAS Radio to the podium. Jeff will moderate today's conversation.
Thank you. Once again, I'm Jeff Slakey from KMAS Radio in Shelton, and I've had the great opportunity to talk with these gentlemen since they've all been in their positions and well before that. So it's always a good time to talk with them. If time allows at the end, we'll walk around and maybe you have some questions for them as well. But I think the priorities laid out by the Chambers and the EDC in those topics that you see on your tables will give a good framework for what we're going to talk about today. So this is kind of just an open dialogue here, so whoever grabs the mic first is going to get a chance to start and then kind of riff on that, everyone else will. Our first one we're going to talk a little bit about is tax burden and employer costs. So they do a lot of surveys in the chambers talking with their business members there, and one of the concerns that always seems to show up is the state's tax burden, including the increases in B&O and new sales tax on services. Analysts also raising questions about possible income tax models that may affect small businesses. Any of you would like to start on this, anticipating these issues unfolding during the short session? Maybe Travis, you're a small business owner, well, you guys all are, but maybe you'd like to kick it off for us here and grab the mic and go for it.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Representative Travis Couture. Nice to see so many friends and leaders here in Mason County show up at an early morning to listen to us ramble on about state government. It's been incredibly difficult over the last, especially the last handful of years, but especially now for business. But not just small business, but large business as well. And as a lot of us know, small businesses act as vendors or support for large businesses. Broader across Washington State, we're losing thousands of jobs. You might have heard Amazon cut a lot of jobs, and Microsoft thinking about it, Boeing thinking about it, right? That's a pretty bad economic indicator. I sit on the Economic Revenue Forecast Council, and we do have shrinking revenue growth. It doesn't mean we don't have less revenue than we ever had before. We've actually had historic revenue in Washington State, and we don't have a revenue problem in the state. We have a spending problem. And right now we have the largest budget ever in state history, a nearly $80 billion budget. And in the last session, the majority party raised the largest tax increases in state history. A lot of which people really, and businesses really started to feel October 1st with the new sales and B&O taxes. And there's still a lot of confusion around that because when you rush through and rank through the largest tax increases in state history, it takes a lot of work for the Department of Revenue to try to figure out those things. Well, now there's unintended consequences. Like, for example, you may not know, but we have many schools here in Mason County that are on the verge of a financial cliff. And, you know, if you think of Shelton School District, for example, is in something called binding conditions, meaning it's flat broken in debt. And right now, you know, the large sales tax, I'm sorry if this microphone is bothering anybody, it's echoing in my ear. But, you know, the unintended consequences that, you know, we're taxing things like schools now with the sales taxes, and that was not supposed to happen. Comcast, for example, for digital advertising, you know, now is going through a lawsuit with the state, which could cost us half of $500 million to our budget. And, you know, there's so many different problems. For example, you know, they increased the sales tax for what's called a live demonstration. Well, if you bring your kid to the driving instructing school when they're a teenager, well, now you're going to pay extra tax because driving instruction is considered a live demonstration. So it's kind of crazy. People are, every single day I open up the news to see another business closing down or moving out. We passed, there was a lot of bills that were passed in the last session, which I view as pretty radical towards business in the wrong way. And we're going to now see the consequences of those things. And as a small business owner myself, you know, I feel like I work really hard every single day. I have 6 employees. And every time I make a little bit of money, I feel like I live in service of the state. Because then I have to pay my B&O taxes, which is the most unfair tax in all of the United States. Doesn't account for your cost of goods sold, doesn't account for your payroll, doesn't account for anything like that. And so my number one goal going into the next session is absolutely fight every single ounce of any thought of a tax increase or any new mandates. So I'm glad this is on the list. But, you know, any relief that we can give to business, both large and small, is absolutely critical right now because it affects so much, not just our economy and our revenue for governments, but also jobs for people. And if you have kids like I do who are looking for jobs, you know, fresh out of high school or anything, it's not only are they having a hard time finding jobs, but also, I don't know if my kids can live here. That's a problem for us. We need to build more housing. And we lost the most construction jobs in the United States this year. That's totally unacceptable. And it's a predictable result of things like rent control. It's a predictable result of having the highest document recording fee in history in all of the United States. It's so many things, permits, I mean, you can go down the list. So I will get off my soapbox because you shouldn't ask me about business and taxes. But it's tough out there, you guys, and I know that as local governments see revenue shrinking, if you're in local government here, do not raise taxes. You have to find a better way. You have to get lean, you have to get efficient, you have to find a smarter way to do the things that need to be done because people here are hurting and they cannot afford any more than we're giving already. And that doesn't mean they don't like you, that doesn't mean they don't need things. They just can't afford it anymore. The cost of living is the highest here, one of the highest in the entire nation. Gas, groceries, rent, insurance, childcare, I mean, energy, you name it. We have some of the highest costs, top 5 in all the country, in all those categories. And, you know, the thought of maybe I need to raise a property tax or I need to raise a sales tax for this or whatever it may be, that's a tough sell to somebody who can't afford to put a gallon of gas in their tank. So we have to, as leaders in this room, I'm challenging everybody to think about the senior on a fixed income, on Social Security that doesn't cover the rent. And to think about single moms, and to think about people who are low income, who right now, we just also went through the largest Medicaid cut in state history as well. It's going to harm our hospitals. But I could go on and on and on for hours, you guys, but we have to think about the little guy. We have to think about the little guy and make sure that we're out for them and we're protecting their wallets.
Drew, I want to follow up with you on that one. As Kevin was saying, you know, these short sessions, not a lot is able to get done necessarily, but maybe some adjustments and tweaks For the state senate side, is there anything that you can do with your colleagues to kind of turn around what Travis was just talking about there?
Well, good morning, and thanks for having us. The short answer is no, and I'll tell you why. Here's one of the challenges of the legislature today, and remove the Republican and Democrat labels to all of us. There are very few business owners left in the legislature, and that's a real problem. It shouldn't be 100% business owners. You should have a true cross-section of society, but this is something that's significantly changed in the time that I've been there. And I look at my colleagues on the Democrat side of the aisle, I can think off the top of my head of two, maybe there's three, between the Senate and the House, that are either own a business or are at least in an executive position. Three. It used to be, the total number used to be in the 40s when I was first elected. And what's happened today is there is a viewpoint that's very pervasive in the legislature that if it's a business, it has money. What you think? That is a viewpoint held by my colleagues on the other side of the aisle. I specifically remember a bill that was going to, this past session, that was going to dramatically increase the licensing cost in the hospitality industry, and very, very strong arguments against doing so from those that run those businesses. And the chair of that committee that I serve on, which is Labor and Commerce, when I talked to her on the sideline, do you know what's going on? They're saying, yeah, I know it's a bad bill, but I have to pass it. No, you don't. No, you don't. But that's how it's operating there. It is a top-down. There is not the discretion. I have never been pressured. I've been advised by my leadership team before on certain votes, but I've never been told how to vote. But that's not how my colleagues on their side of the aisle operate. And it's unfortunate. I mean, you look at one of our largest employers in the state, Microsoft. President of Microsoft at the AWB conference a month and a half ago flat out stated, if you continue to increase these taxes, we are leaving. I'll tell you what, that'll solve the housing crisis a little bit. You're going to have a ton of workers not here anymore. But I don't think that's the scenario we want. And we've already seen it with Boeing over the past decade, continuing to build new plants in other states. It's a real issue, folks. Look, I'll gladly have the debate with what the tax rate should be in our current, in the structure we had before this past session. I welcome that debate. But today, the debate is how much higher. And in a 60-day session, it is relatively difficult to enact major policy overhaul. But what we've seen already, proposals from, again, from my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, is an increase in taxes. This is the first budget ever passed in which the first revenue forecast after enactment of the budget put us behind. And that was with a $9.5 billion tax increase. It's insane, folks. Absolutely insane. When I was elected in 2012, our state operating budget was $31 billion, and Travis is today 85. How many of your incomes saw that increase? And look, the other side, frankly, has, and I don't mean to get partisan here, but I'm just going to speak reality, folks. Businesses are pulling out. You look at some of the major restaurant groups in Seattle, say we're not expanding anymore. In fact, we're contracting. That's reality. And Microsoft saying we're going to leave. I can't say who the company was, but it's a publicly traded company whose headquarters in downtown Seattle. They used to be looking at going to Bellevue. Now they're looking, because they have branches up and down the West Coast. Now they're talking about one of those other states to relocate their headquarters. That's reality. We've got to change the direction of it. I can tell you how that happens. We will fight for that. But you got to show up. Because, and you need your employees and your customers to show up. Because again, the chairs of those committees, what they see if you're a business owner is, oh, you got pockets, you got money. That's how they look at it. They don't understand the margins. And, but when you have heartfelt testimony from people saying, I might not have a job, I might not have my business, that hopefully strikes the chord better. So I highly encourage you to get involved and make an appearance at those committee hearings. Because once it hits the floor, it's too late. It's a rule of politics. It doesn't matter who's in charge. You don't bring a bill to the floor if you don't have the votes to pass it, except for one time in the House. The speaker really did not know what she was doing in that one. So when we get bombarded with the emails and the phone calls when something's coming to the floor, it's too late, folks. And you gotta make your voice known, let your process.
About a week or two ago at PUD3, we had the State of the Community. A lot of those leaders were here in this room as well, talking about a lot of things that they're doing to advance what's going on in the 35th Mason County. PUD3 talking about their new substations that are going online. County talking about potential sewer infrastructure up into the Kitsap area, which is part of the 35th. Dan, this is now moving on to this kind of topic of infrastructure and site readiness. Let's talk a little bit about how our area can advance freight mobility, water, power, broadband capacity this session. The return of site readiness grants are back online, so that's a thing. And kind of talk to us a little bit about infrastructure from where you see it.
Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for having me today. And ditto what the two of these, your colleagues said. We're at a tipping point when it comes to taxes and regulation for businesses in Washington State, and we need to know this. When it comes to, and I will answer your question, I assure you, but there was a lot of things that I think we need to talk about. We're at about $4.5 billion now walking off store shelves annually. So our businesses are not only suffering from this exorbitant business occupation tax and regulatory climate, they are surviving an inflation pressure that most other states don't have, at least to the extent that Washington State's allowed to get to. So there is so much more that needs to be worked on. We have got to listen to our employers when they say they need to move goods and services faster and more economically to my businesses, because I've got to absorb those $4.5 billion that are walking off my shelves that a lot of times are not insured fully. Some of them are insured, and then the insurance rates, everyone knows about insurance rates now, they go up because our loss rate in Washington State is higher than any other state now. Finally, we are higher than New York, Chicago area as far as property crimes, meaning the amount of project product actually walking off the shelves. It is imperative that we complete the freight corridor, Highway 3 freight corridor, Jeff, I think is the answer to that question. I'm really proud of everyone in this room. For once, I think, the first time, and I give a lot of credit to the Chambers and the EDC, thank you so much. I think all of our oars are in the water going the same direction in the boat. And I'll tell you what, it will make Mason County, it will do us, it'll serve us well. It'll make sure that our projects and our things that we want to do, we will do them Mason County's way and at Mason County's pace. And I'll tell you what, I think we're in front finally. We are already planning for the power that we're going to need. We're planning well in advance for the sewer needs and the water needs that we have. So to that end, this delegation has put a lot of effort into making sure that infrastructure is prioritized on member request projects. We've done, I can't even remember how many electrification projects or power generation projects. Not generation, excuse me. I wish we could do generation. That would be neat to do someday. But power distribution, we are working with both of the major PUDs in the county to make sure we can get power distribution. The biggest issue is the price of copper and other conducting wires, if you will. It's tough to get. I hear all of you utility providers loud and clear. You want your stuff to quit being stolen off the power poles. So again, we'll be reintroducing some more legislation to try to get ahead of that copper theft. Our infrastructure, every time we make it, 5 steps forward, we kind of go 2 steps back because somebody has figured out they can take a pipe pole, grab onto a power line or a phone line, wrap it around the hitch of their truck and just drive off with 5 miles of very valuable wire that is very expensive to replace. I think what we have to do as a legislature to answer the question fully is we have to understand these things, and we have to deploy resources to make sure the businesses realize some measure of relief from these situations. Thank you all.
A topic we'll get into in a moment is permitting as well, but I can see that under site readiness also. If you guys want to riff on that a little bit, how you're looking at different permitting processes, so the pace of growth is a little faster?
Well, I guess I can start this one too. I'm on the local government committee. It has to do with the permitting. If we talk about Washington State or regionally, 35, each one of our permitting, the county permitting entities work differently. So one of the things that we could really do is make sure that our permitting processes are streamlined and they're similar. The contractors or developers say, well, working in Mason County is great, but going and working in Thurston County, that's not so great, right? It's really tough. I think from a local government perspective, I wanted to see a commonality of how you apply for, what the permitting prices are. That way, there is predictability when you're making up your mind whether you want to, or if you want to invest your gold into this project. I think that's one thing from the state perspective we can do. I heard all the local providers as well, or locally elected county commissioners, city elected officials. Please don't mandate anything else when it comes to permitting, right? If you mandate that the permit can only take 10 days, right, then I don't have enough money to process the permits based on all of the things the state says you have to do. So I think we have got to really make sure that we keep an eye on streamlining what process the state is requiring the counties to follow. That way the counties and cities can deliver the product in a more timely fashion and more timely and more predictable, safe fashion. That's what I got to start.
I'll just chime into that real quick. So one thing I appreciate with the new governor is he is very open to reform in this area. A lot of the building issues that, when you hear issues at the local level, it's local jurisdictions in their permitting process for a single family or multifamily. But there are some permitting things that happen at the state level. Do we have a commissioner here from Hospital District 1? They've been through hell. And I've raised this, and the governor has said to me that he wants to see this reform process take place because this costs them a solid $500,000 in delays because of things that happen at the state level. So on a positive note, I will say that this administration is open to that and figuring out how to make sure that those things don't happen again.
One thing we heard from County Administrator Travis at the State of the Community was in Mason County specifically, the permitting process was at a months-long wait, now down to about 19 days, I think he said, after kind of the implements that they have put into effect there. Another topic that is on the minds of a lot of folks here is workforce and education alignment. Let's talk a little bit about what can happen this session in supporting of career and technical education through apprenticeships and also rural workforce retention. Travis?
Yeah. Again, speaking as a small business owner, I have to, when I hire an employee, I typically have to train them from, beginning to end, right? It feels like a godsend when someone applies for a job at my business that already has the requisite skills. Our community career technical colleges need to produce the people our businesses need with the skills our businesses need, right? And of course, they're doing some of that, right? And we got some nursing programs and other things, and healthcare is a big industry in Washington, but it gets so much deeper. And when you're talking about apprenticeships, the state's rules around apprenticeships and hours and how you can achieve getting apprentices in is incredible, and it's only getting worse. It's going to be harder than ever before, and there's even talks about changing in a negative way the prevailing wage rules and laws that make it even more difficult. So on the apprentice front, I think there needs to be a lot of work done, and I think it's not actually, the solution is not that difficult. We just have to unravel a few things that have been done in that space in the last couple of years to kind of restore project labor agreements, by the way, PLAs. There's new rules for that as well from the governor, who I don't appreciate on that issue. And it's like, we're going in the wrong direction. I mentioned revenue forecast earlier. One of the biggest reasons for the big slowdown in revenue is home permits, right? And real estate excise taxes, right? Because if you're not building stuff, you're not getting revenue. And so this flows into permits and everything else. And I'm also proud of the work that we've done here locally to make sure we've invested millions upon millions, tens of millions of dollars into infrastructure, because we're going to have unprecedented growth in the north end of the county in Belfair area when the new dry dock comes in PSNS. And with that, 60,000 new people, a lot of which will not be able to live in Bremerton or Kitsap County, they'll come our direction. So we have to be able to be ready for that growth. And we're, I think, ahead of the ball. And it's not always easy. Not everyone always agrees on the pathway forward. But I look at it as a puzzle piece. And this goes into site readiness a little bit as well. You have to be able to have water, power, sewer, roads, all of those different things in order to build housing and commercial developments and all of those types of things that make sure that people have good paying jobs. Especially on the north end of their Highway 3, you're going to have in the future maybe some action from some of two major tribes with potentially a casino and all sorts of other things up in that area around Lake Flora Road. Now these are opportunities if we want to view them as opportunities and if we're prepared for them. Or as Mike Tyson would say, everyone has a plan to get punched in the face, right? Well, maybe our job is to maybe not get punched in the face, so we have a little bit of a plan with infrastructure, and we've breathed life into the Belfair bypass so many times, probably about 15 times a session, but it's still funded, it's still on track, it's still being built, and by God, by the time my life is over, I'm going to drive on that road. It's important. All those puzzle pieces have to go together. You can't have water and power, but no sewer and no road, right? They all have to flow together and they connect like a jigsaw puzzle. And it's vitally important because when you build new things, when you build new houses, it spreads the property tax levy and gives people property tax relief, gives people jobs, gives us more revenue for local governments, all sorts of other things. Growth is good. Smart growth is even better, but it all starts with being ready with that infrastructure.
Yeah, Dan, why don't you pick that up? We talk a lot about education during session as well. And so what are some things that you're looking at in how you can talk to the other side, the majority of everybody in session here next month on reallocating or looking differently at how you can fund education to help support learning apprenticeships or finding reliable work?
Well, we just got to do it, right? I mean, I apprenticed as a kid. I was allowed to work as a kid. I was very young when I started the family business, and I just picked it up from masters. We don't let kids participate in apprenticeships, meaning we don't let anybody 18 and younger participate in real apprenticeships. It's like, see me do this. I'm going to tell you guys, at 15 years old, I saved my first life as a firefighter. I wasn't a professional. I was a volunteer. I was allowed to do things. If we want a ready workforce that is ready to participate, we have got the workforce that is ready to go. Our community and technical colleges have to reach out to the EDCs, to the chambers, to the community groups. What are the needed certifications? And every year the community and technical colleges have a forum where we go to and they ask us for help. And they tell us just like this, what we need. They always ask us, well, what can we do for you? And I said, go do an industry needs assessment for certifications. Don't only put people in college with basket weaving degrees or political science degrees. They don't make money right now in this economy. They just don't. The pathway to a $100,000 year career is 10 times quicker in the trades right now. It is absolute. But service is dying. And we have got to change how we look at it. People right now, when they enter the job, the workforce, they need money quicker than I even needed it, right? They need a lot more money a lot quicker. And the way to do that is not go to 8 years or 6 years or 4 years of college and go $100 million, but $150,000 in debt. It's to offer the needed certifications, be it medical certifications, be it HVAC certifications, easy entry into apprenticeships. Allow those that have not yet attained the age of 18 years old to start working. Because when you ask the Boeings of the world, when you ask the Amazons of the world, you ask the employers, the employers that pay that $100,000 a year or start out at something that's entry level, can get somebody into this, and provide for themselves. You ask them, what do you want? Well, I need a high school diploma, and I need somebody to show up to work on time, and I need somebody to do it the way we teach them to do it. And they tell me, all of them, they can't find enough that meet that. We've got to allow our kids to start working and get experience before they turn the age of 18 years of age. It is absolutely imperative.
I want to move on now to permitting, housing, and local government constraints. Here we have many of the Shelton City Council members in the audience here, and Drew, will start with you. Local jurisdictions facing, of course, rising costs and limited revenue. We've known that for a long time. What state level actions can support housing supply and permitting efficiencies? I kind of think that goes back to with our infrastructure conversation just a moment ago.
Well, I'd say the state should get out of the way. That's the first thing. You look at the Building Code Council, and the previous administration jammed that with people that were not in the industry. And look at the number of revisions. And I'm not saying we shouldn't have codes, but obviously we should, right? And we should have concern for the environment. But when you look at the changes they've put down on the energy code, which has skyrocketed the cost, and at the same time they're removing energy sources from our grid, those things don't compute. And the cost of a home today is substantially higher because of the regulatory environment. The average, that's, I think, over the last couple of years, it's added right around $45,000 or $50,000 to the cost of every single family home by state regulations. That's absurd. And their answer is, well, let's raise the taxes, so that'll drive down the cost. These are the arguments you hear on the Senate floor. Like, what the hell economic course taught you that? I mean, if that's the case, why don't we have 100% sales tax if that's going to drive down the cost? I mean, it's insane, absolutely insane. I think that's the biggest thing, is to have predictable consistency, and we don't have that at the state level. And they've made it tougher and tougher to take a piece of land and build, especially in rural areas. And as Travis alluded to, with the Navy bringing in over the next decade thousands more active duty and civilian workers, we need more housing. And I think the more local control you have over that, the better. GMA is a huge issue, especially in Kitsap, that is largely overseen by unelected folks that are not even in the region that they're issuing guidance on, if you can call it that. So, again, I believe a big part of that is the state getting out of the way. And also goes back to having a workforce that can work. And we've been losing that, and that is unfortunate. The number of trade jobs have gone away. I think a kid should be able to graduate from high school, and if not have the certification for a given trades industry, be damn close to being able to have it so they can enter the workforce. Yeah, we have enough sociology and political science degrees floating around. They're not building houses. We've also got to embrace technology. Whether you like it or not, AI is here, and it's going to be here even faster. And if whatever business or government you're involved with, you better be using it, because your competitors are. And that's reality. But what do we do at the state level? Can't use AI. And I'm oversimplifying it. That's essentially what's happened. Because they look at it as threatening jobs. Okay, so we're going to be slower, less efficient, instead of training people to utilize it. And you all use it whether you know it or not. If you go to start type something and it's finishing your sentence, that's AI. I mean, that's at the most simple, basic form. So we've got to embrace technology and utilize it and recognize the changes that are happening around us.
Travis, you said about 60,000 people coming in with the new dry dock and things like that, often not able to live in the Kitsap area. How would you see possible potential changes in zoning and codes and things here in Mason to help alleviate that amount of folks down here?
Yeah, just to piggyback a little bit on what Drew said, this it's one thing to have the codes and the building code council and all that. You know, I'm a general contractor, and I see at least one other in the room, AJ back here. So, you know, I went to a thing in, I think me and Dan went to a thing in Kitsap, and it's all local government folks, like Regional Coordinating Council, and we're talking about housing. And I said, raise your hand if you're a general contractor, and I was the only one in the room, right? And here we are talking about housing. Well, the median house price in Washington State is over $600,000. And 40% of that is regulations and fees, impact fees, and everything else. So the opportunity is absolutely there. Also believe in local control. So if Mason County or the city of Shelton decides this is what I'm going to do, whether I agree with it or not, you know, I might talk to them about it or something like that. But you know, this is not the state's job, in my opinion, to go and mandate that city of Shelton or Mason County government does something. And that's part of the problem of how we got here, because it mandated things like Growth Management Act and kept adding layers and layers and layers. And now we have tons of buildable lands. We don't have any buildable lands because of a document, right? And we need to make it a lot easier. It's getting out of the way is one thing. And Drew mentioned predictability as a business owner, as someone building housing. We live in a world right now where we have to lay down infrastructure to attract development. It used to be maybe developers would build some of their own infrastructure. But if you do that in today's world, in reality here, the projects don't pencil out. And if they don't pencil out and they don't make a profit, they don't build here. And that's why we lost the largest amount of construction jobs in the United States. They're moving to places like Idaho and Texas and Arizona, where it's faster, cheaper, and easier to build things. So we need to make it faster, easier, cheaper to build things. And when we do that, we will attract the jobs back. But then we also have to be ready for that growth and make sure that we have an educated workforce able to do it. And so it would be great if I could stand up here and just deliver the silver bullet solution to all of that. But the number one thing is stop raising our taxes. That's number one. Stop passing radical things like rent control, where nobody wants to build or rent out housing, right? That is an economic bomb. That is a ticking time bomb of economic proportions that is already reaping terrible benefits on our economy and our revenue forecast as we see it right now. But, you know, get more flexible with the zoning. Get more flexible with the buildable lands. Put a little bit more effort into the comprehensive planning and the growth management process so that you can have more buildable lands, right? And, you know, stop passing so many damn fees and impact fees and regulations, because at the end of the day, I own a cabinet shop, Sunlight Living Works in Johnsbury Road in Shelton. You should go check it out sometime. But here's what I know, and the world is pretty simple, right? If AJ doesn't build a house, I don't build cabinets. And if I don't build cabinets, I don't employ someone at $30 an hour to cut wood in my shop. And I can't, it's make it even harder to do that if our career community and technical colleges and our K-12 schools don't have wood shop, don't have any kind of trades pathway, or if everything I look at coming out of Evergreen College is, you know, a socialist degree. So, yeah, it is. It's a socialist degree. And so, you know, I mean, we are careening towards I'm just not even gonna just beat around the bush. We are careening towards socialism in our state. And we see that in the recent elections, Seattle City Council. What happens in Seattle never stays in Seattle. And at the end of the day, socialism is has predictable outcomes, and it's always failure, and it's always misery. And that's exactly what we're going through today. And I'm sorry if maybe you don't see it that way, but that is absolutely the truth, and I promise you right. We have to reject it. It doesn't matter if you're a Republican or a Democrat. There's many Democrats, to Drew's point, in the legislature today that are uncomfortable with being an ism. And you know, some of them, a couple of them business owners, right? A few more starting to say, wait a second, what are we doing here? This is nuts. And you know what, at the end of the day, when my kids, I have one that's out of the house, knock on wood, still out of the house, but you know, and two more teenagers on the way, guess what? My oldest can't live in Mason County. He can't live in the community he grew up in because he can't find a job here. That's a problem. It hurts my heart. I see him on Thanksgiving, luckily, but that's about it. We don't have opportunities for our kids. The legislature and the DNR is destroying the timber industry, and the more we capitulate to the radical environmentalism that is destroying our timber industry, the worse it will continue to get. Because at the end of the day, they do not want you to cut a tree. That is the end game. Period. And if you don't believe that, you can't see the forest for the trees, no pun intended. Here's the deal. There is not a single high school graduate, including my kids or yours, that will open up the classified ads in the newspaper when they graduate high school and see a job for carbon analyst. Those are Wall Street jobs in New York. The kids, my kids, your kids, the kids coming out of high school today don't even know what they lost. That's how far removed we are from it. Our rural communities are being destroyed by this socialism. You know how many friends I had move out to Tennessee or Texas because they couldn't rent a home, starting with COVID and the landlord-tenant laws? It's nuts. So first thing is like be a doctor, do no harm. Stop doing things that harm. And we have to be more, I'm going to bring up an uncomfortable example. We had a business at the Port of Shelton, and it said it wanted a new building, bigger building, long-term lease, new improvements. And what happened? The port said, no, we can't accommodate that. They went to Thurston County and immediately got accommodated, and now that business does business in Thurston County. Lack of sales tax, or lack of tax revenue for us, lack of jobs for us. If you're a port, if you're in some kind of economic development, you have to be rolling out the red carpet. You know? Hell, I might move my business to the port. It's not there right now, but it doesn't pencil out. And we have, what, 10, 12 buildings there laying empty? Just think about that. It's a little short-term pain to roll out the red carpet to help out small business, but someone has to be responsible, and that's us. We're the leaders here. We're the business and economic and government leaders in this county, and we have to be responsible for the health of our people, even though we have to deal with things from the state level and other things, from maybe the federal level as well. But there are still things we can do to make things easier. Can Mason County make permits go faster? Sure. You know, can we roll out the red carpet and help out development, infrastructure, and business, whatever? Yes, we can. We can absolutely do that. So although there's doom and gloom at the state level, there's still a lot of things that we can do to make things better for people.
Well, in an attempt to get us out at 9:30, got about 10 minutes. If anybody has questions ready, maybe start writing those down and be sure that you get right to the point on those questions, and I'll come out and let you ask those. While we wait for folks to think about that, let's just talk about the session. What are you looking at with bills? If it's pre-introduction day today, what are some things that you guys are each looking at, concerned about, that have been talked about to be in the hopper? What are you looked at to put in there for the upcoming session? Dan, we'll start with you. And if you have a question, put your hand up and I'll come by your way.
Well, I try not to run, because it is the short session, I try not to run as many bills as I would run in a long session, but I will have a longer list of bills. I want to take another stab at this copper theft. Mason County and Kitsap County are uniquely exposed to copper theft at a way larger rate than most others. But we need to get in front of it. I'm going to be doing a retail theft bill again. I do believe concealment should be added to the element of the crime. I want retailers to be able to predictably engage with a thief at the point that the person conceals the item. You know, the detractors say that that's not a good idea because then you're going to criminalize somebody that was stealing food. And, you know, I try to point out to everyone, it doesn't matter what walks off the shelf, it's the amount that's walking off the shelf. $4.5 billion would feed every poor person in Washington State. So the money is not going to those in need. The money is going to enterprise that is nefarious and is bad. So I'm going to be running bill on that again. Both Travis, Drew, and I have been faced with sexually violent predator community release. We've talked about it 100 times. We are going to try to get the state to do the right things. Again, we have a stronger coalition of majority party members that think that we're doing this release of sexually violent predators in a less than optimal way. So we'll have some bills around that. There's a couple bills in local government we're considering on permitting and permit development. And then I have a career technical concept that I'm working on. I don't know that it makes it into a bill form, and I'm still working on civilly committing those that are failing to thrive in our society, putting them into a program where we rebuild their lives. I want that. I think the only way we're actually going to get ahead of or make progress on our homelessness, mental illness, and substance abuse is actually love people enough to take away the keys, rebuild their lives, put them back together. So it's still going to be a pretty tough session for me. I got a lot to work on. Thank you.
Well, I'm a big believer in more bills doesn't make better government. The right bills make better government, right? So I've never really cared about whether I'm getting a governor's pen or not. I've got enough of them. But having said that, I serve as the deputy leader for the Senate Republicans, and so it gives me a little bit of a different role. It's more on the political side and helping navigate some issues internally, as well as trying to ensure that with the other side we can minimize some of the bad legislation that might come forward. So I serve more in that role. But one of the things I am working on with a colleague on the other side of the aisle is the city of Lacey, which is now in our district. I mean, my gosh, we thought we'd keep curving up further in Thurston, but they recently built a new public safety building. It's beautiful police headquarters. One of the challenges we have in law enforcement today is the regional academies. So it used to just be Burien, and now we have one in Spokane and one in Vancouver. But this is a challenge for whether it's a city police department, a sheriff's department, to get your new hires through the academy. You're talking about spending months away from home, and that's a detriment to recruitment. My son's a Mason County Sheriff's deputy. He did the Vancouver one. I mean, that tells you something about the transportation on a side note. He'd rather drive to Vancouver than go to Burien. That says something to itself. But anyway, Lacey's built this facility without raising taxes. Their local tax dollars, they were able to build this without increasing the burden on taxpayers. And they've got the ability to have those regional academies. So working on that, if we could have one that's in the South Sound like that, that's a game changer for jurisdictions throughout the South Region Sound area to be able to better recruit for law enforcement. And on that note, when you count the Washington, D.C. in the 50 states, so maybe 51, we rank 51 in per capita for law enforcement. That's not good, folks. We need to have more of them. And that's one of the major things that we'll work on this coming session.
So I think it might be helpful, for people in the room who don't already know. I'll just quickly describe, like Drew said, he's on Labor and Commerce, but as far as kind of budget stuff goes, I'm the ranking member of the House Appropriations Committee, so I'm the House Budget Lead for my side. And these two gentlemen serve on the Transportation Committee, which is the nicer budget of the two, I think, sometimes. But we divide and conquer a lot. It's a lot of work to do. So I handle some of the operating budget stuff. They handle that. We take team capital budget stuff. Always the priority for capital budget is economic development, infrastructure, and preserving our community spaces, right? Like, for example, we did a lot of work on the Granges. If you don't already know, if you had a bill in the long session, it gets automatically reintroduced for the short session. So we already have a ton of bills that will be automatically reintroduced for the short session. I am working on a supplemental budget alternative to whatever Governor Ferguson is assured to come out with here actually this month now, to try to put those ideas on the table. That's my job to do that. I'm about 7,000 pages deep into that. I've been working on it for months now. It will focus on, fixing some healthcare situations, helping out our retirees, pensioners. Also, no new taxes, reduce spending, and protect taxpayers. That's the general gist of it. Also we represent Thurston and Kitsap counties. One of my top priorities, policy-wise, going into the next session, I think we're gonna finally be able to do something about it, is to fix the Keeping Families Together Act. We should not be a society that looks the other way when babies and toddlers are dying from fentanyl overdoses in their homes with their fentanyl-abusing parents. That is wrong. And I finally feel like we're at a tipping point, and there's enough members of the majority party now for me to pass a bill that agree with me. And so there's a lot of good or maybe bad or good things, whatever things that happen in the legislature. You know, we can complain about a regulation or a tax or something like that. But you know what? When I go home every night and have to reconcile everything that I've done or everything that I've worked on that day in the legislature, you know what keeps me awake at night is knowing that there's a totally preventable child death in our state. You might have saw the Seattle Times over the weekend talking about this in the long-form article about it. We have the highest amount of child fatalities in our history right now. And literally, as we speak, I'm not even making this up. As we speak, there's a 0 to 3-year-old being Narcaned in our streets because they are intentionally left with parents who are suffering through a hard drug substance abuse addiction. I feel like we're going to be able to fix that. That's my top priority. I'm going to focus on one thing and get it done and save some lives. And then also the budget stuff as well.
We have time for just one question here.
I actually have two.
Pick your favorite.
One of them has to do with the black demonstration taxability. We're going to get more, find out what that actually is, because I'm a member of a few organizations that have black demonstrations. And the other question is law enforcement. How can we speed up getting officers actually on the force? Because we all know how long it can take, a couple of years.
Yeah, so for the live demonstration, the new sales tax rules, and you can go to DOR, Department of Revenue, and ask about that. They've made a series of determinations, you know, rulemaking and other things that determine what is and what isn't. But the broader thing is, you and everyone else is wondering, right? Because the whole rollout of this was a complete mess. And there's still businesses, you know, being surprised, wait, I'm subject to this? And then also businesses that, you know, just still trying to figure out if they're subject to it. So it's a real pain behind. I'll let someone else, I'll let Dan answer that.
So police recruitment and quick timing them into the profession, we made a lot of strides there. WSP for a long time would not allow somebody to be hired on what we call a lateral hire, somebody that has extreme experience. We completed about 4 years worth of work, and we are doing that now. We just graduated our first experienced academy. We think that really does benefit the patrol in many ways, in that we're getting experience. We're getting you know, centuries of experience coming to Washington State from other jurisdictions that might help refresh WSP on the way they do things. So we think that's impressive. We have more academy space, BLEA Academy, Basic Law Enforcement Academy space, than we do people you know, that apply for those jobs. We are going to have to continue to work with our sheriffs and our cities on what are those sticking points. Some of the sticking points were, and used to be, and still kind of are, that they have to hire somebody, employ them for almost a whole calendar year before they can make them into and get them into an academy. And that is just an expense they can't afford any longer. So that is why these regional academies that my dear senator and my representative colleague Travis, what they said is we got to do everything we can to make sure that those opportunities, those training opportunities, are readily available, quickly readily available. And I think we're doing that. The one thing that they didn't mention was the continuing education that we have required in law enforcement right now is epic. So those basic law enforcement academies are also employed keeping up the basic law enforcement certifications. I think we've done all that we could do right now. We need to recruit more people and get them into the classes.
Thank you, Deidre. You have a couple more things?
Thank you so much, Jeff. And thank you to our legislators. Big round of applause for some of you. As we mentioned earlier, bills are rolling out again, starting today, and they are starting their hard work for us. And I know we've got a hard out for some of the folks at the table, so you are officially off the hook. But we appreciate your time this morning. I just want to say how grateful we are for the willingness to serve our community, the continued communication with the chambers and the EDC. It is really thanks to you that we're able to work together and seize those opportunities to foster a healthy, economy, and a strong community. We are very glad to have a one-page joint priorities list for you this year. We're very hard to get that happen. So thank you to Kevin Schutte for your leadership on that, and Carrie at North Mason Chamber as well. I just want to turn it over quickly for Kevin and Carrie for some closing remarks.
No, you
You're
go.
so polite. You go.
Today you've heard directly from our legislators about their priorities and plans, and this is your opportunity to continue a meaningful dialogue. I encourage all of you to engage with your legislators early and often. Share your concerns freely, offer constructive solutions, and when possible, testify about the issues that matter to you and your business. Advocacy is a collective effort. It's not just what we do as a chamber or an EDC, it's what we will all do together.
A very special thank you to our sponsors, Green Diamond and Alderbrook Resort and Spa, for making this event happen.
And as a reminder, we will have a recap of today's program and contact information for all of our legislators online at masonchamber.com. I also know that Jude Williams is here from Mason County Journal, so thank you for joining us. Obviously, Jeff from KMAS, we're so thankful for our media partners. Thank you to all of you for your time and attention on this Monday after Thanksgiving weekend. I hope you enjoyed the caffeine once it arrived. Please take a pastry on your way. Enjoy your holiday season and remember to shop local. Thanks.